Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn for today. Today we have Xavier Whitford, and she is the founder and executive director of the Tommy Corral Memorial Foundation, better known as TCMF, which is a nonprofit organization committed to promoting mental health awareness, suicide prevention, um, and I just lost my place, I'm sorry, and resilience building through education, advocacy, and support. After losing her son Tommy to suicide in 2014, Xavier transformed her personal tragedy into a powerful force for healing and change. Her journey through complicated grief, PTSD, anxiety, and depression became the foundation for her mission to ensure that no one has to face mental health challenges or suicide loss alone. TCMF provides accessible mental health support services, including peer support groups for teens and young adults, community education, and outreach programs that reduce stigma and promote early intervention. As a trained mental health first aid instructor, Xavier has certified hundreds of individuals, from educators and law enforcement to parents and youth workers, giving them the tools and confidence to recognize signs of mental health or substance use challenges and to respond effectively in times of crisis. Through her unwavering dedication and compassionate leadership, Xavier has become a respected advocate for mental health in Northern Illinois and beyond. Her impact continues to grow as she builds partnerships, empowers individuals, and leads systemic efforts to create a culture where mental wellness is prioritized and every life is valued. So let's welcome Xavier. And what we're going to do today is have her do her presentation. If you would, I would have you hold your questions until the end, and then you just put them in the chat. I'll read the questions and Xavier will respond to them. Thank you for joining us today. Xavier, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I do have a PowerPoint that I'm going to put up here, and I appreciate the warm welcome and introduction from you, Jeanette. And thank you for everybody taking time just today to learn about healthy boundaries for improved mental health. Today, this is something, powerful. We're talking about healthy boundaries, right? Boundaries are not walls. They're not punishments. They're not selfish. They're actually guidelines we can set to protect our emotional, mental, physical, and relational well-being. And so that's what we're talking about today. So why are boundaries necessary? We're going to understand today by the end of this what boundaries are, identify how poor boundaries affect mental health, learn how to set and communicate boundaries, and connect boundaries to resilience in itself. So what are healthy boundaries? Let's start with that. Boundaries are something that I am very passionate about talking about because it's been a key component in my life with family members and individuals, and just serving as well to make sure that I'm also taking care of my own mental health. Healthy boundaries defined what I'm responsible for and what I'm not responsible for. So something healthy boundaries, things to think about are emotional boundaries. So I'm not responsible for managing someone else's feelings, reminding ourselves of that, right? Physical boundaries are important, and knowing, whether or not individuals like to be touched or not touched, or hugged or not hugged, or, what is a acceptable boundary space for that individual. Time boundary. I've had to, in my own recovery, in my own life, set boundaries for myself. So for instance, on Wednesday nights, it's our family night. And so I set a boundary from the time I pick up my granddaughter to about 8 o'clock when it's her time to get for bed, that I don't work, I don't answer calls, I don't respond to individuals in that time frame because that's a time boundary for me because my time with her is healing and helps me, right? Or some people might set boundaries of I cannot answer messages after 9 p.m. Or a specific time frame. These are what we would call time boundaries. There's also conversational boundaries. So I've had to do this with individuals and family members in my life when it comes to politics, when it comes to discussions of certain things in religion, or other things, right? Like we say, I'm not comfortable discussing that. That's not a topic of conversation that I want to go to with you. Um, and we have the ability and the right to be able to do that. Digital boundaries. Again, sometimes I know many people have to shut off social media or quiet social media or their phone for periods of time so that they can have a rest or a reset when it comes to that. These are things that are okay to do, and just keeping in mind that boundaries help prevent emotional overload and protect our energy levels too. And that's an important thing to keep in mind when we're working through our own mental health and our own mental journey. So, um, how poor boundaries impact our mental health? Well, it leads to burnout. Um, Without boundaries, we can say yes when we really mean no. We can overcommit ourselves or take responsibility for others' emotions. And that again can lead to burnout, increased anxiety. This can increase symptoms of disruption to our sleep, cause emotional deregulation, lead to relapse patterns, and emotional exhaustion. It can trigger activation. Remember that boundaries are not about control, they're about our own self regulation. And that's an important part of our own mental health journey and working through that. So, what are some signs that you may need stronger boundaries, right? Like, that's the question I often get. Well, how do I know that I don't have good boundaries or I may need stronger boundaries? Well, ask yourself, do I feel resentment sometimes towards people or situations or things that I'm doing? Do I overextend myself? Do I feel drained? Am I ignoring my own needs? Right? These are things that we want to recognize and might be signs that you need stronger boundaries. Guilt when saying no, difficulty expressing what you need or what you aren't capable of providing, right? Avoiding conflict at all costs, feeling this responsibility to fix others. These are not character flaws. Sometimes we feel like they are, but they're not. They're signals that maybe we don't have the correct boundaries set up in our lives. And boundaries they're a skill, right? They're a learned skill. They're not a personality trait within us. And I want to express that because I've had to learn this skill and practice this skill. And I'll be honest with you today and every day that I'm not always, I sometimes fall and falter and I say yes when I mean no. I do overtax myself. I sometimes do ignore my own needs for helping other people. And so it's constantly a skill I'm working towards and I'm finessing and I'm learning and getting better at each and every day. And so that's why this is a topic that I chose to talk on today because I'm sure I'm not the only one. When you are in the field of helping others, you tend to have to set strong boundaries and continue to work on the skill in order to protect yourself and protect your own mental health and make sure that you're not filling from an empty cup, right? And oftentimes when we're struggling with our own mental health, we forget this at times too. So when we talk about boundaries and resilience, how do those two things play into effect? Okay, how do they relate to one another? Resilience is about recovery, not toughness. And resilience equals the ability to recover and adapt. So again, boundaries protect this emotional capacity and our emotional capacity. Boundaries reduce repeated stress exposure and reinforce our own personal agency. Um, Boundaries, again, reinforce our self-worth. When you set a boundary, you're telling your brain that I matter and that my mental health matters and that my taking care of my emotional and mental state matters. And that's important because we all do matter. And we need to set boundaries so that our brain knows that we're prioritizing ourselves and that we matter as well. So, just talking about and thinking about types of boundaries in recovery, there's treatment boundaries. So, making sure that we're keeping our therapy appointments, making sure that we're taking time for our self-care, right? And the things that are part of our treatment plan. Medication boundaries, making sure that we are setting time aside and we're taking our prescribed medication and we're making that a priority, right? Social, avoiding triggering environments, setting social boundaries is important because if we're not in a good mental health state and we go into an environment that is triggering, it's only going to worsen our state, right? For me, that often looks like um, there's certain people in my life or in my family that I have to avoid when my mental health is not well, right? Or I have to limit the interaction with them because it could potentially put me in a worse mental health state. When we talk about work and school, making sure we're using accommodations if necessary, that we're using the tools that are there for us. Family, to protect recovery progress. Again, sometimes we have to have family boundaries, right? And we have to make sure that we are advocating for ourselves and setting these boundaries because boundaries are a part of self-advocacy and making sure that we're protecting ourselves. I've been personally going through a situation with a family member I'm very close to who is not in recovery mode with their own mental health and their own substance use. And so I have to set up boundaries for myself to be able to keep my own mental health in check and take breaks when necessary when dealing with them and letting them know that these are the things that I'm not going to allow you to do anymore because you're not in recovery and that's your choice and you have the right for that. But I'm not going to allow you to negatively impact me and my mental health, me and my family and their safety. And so these are boundaries that I've had to set up for myself and working through that relationship and what that relationship looks like now with them not making this choice for themselves, right? And they have the right to do that, but I also have the right to set boundaries and protect myself and my family. And so do you. So, how do we set a boundary? What does that look like? So, it starts often with this I feel whatever when this happens. I need this to move forward. So I feel disrespected when you don't make sure that you are listening to me and the boundary that I'm setting. And I need you to understand this, understand this moving forward in our relationship. So you don't have to have a long explanation. You don't need their approval, but you do, to set a boundary, you do need to identify the need for the boundary, use clear language to that individual, stay calm and firm in those boundaries and expect that it's going to be uncomfortable and discomfort. You're going to have that because it isn't easy to it's easy for us to set our boundaries and maybe communicate that, but the response that we get isn't always easy to take or easy to listen to, right? Because when we set boundaries, people don't always like that, right? And we might have to repeat it over and over. And we don't have to give a long explanation. We don't need them to prove it because it's for us, right? It's not necessarily something they need to approve. And discomfort does not mean the boundary is wrong either. It means that oftentimes for individuals who are experiencing that, it's showing that there is a lack of boundary because their discomfort is showing that, right? And so that's something that we need to understand and know is that discomfort doesn't mean the boundary is wrong. So why oftentimes boundaries are challenging is because we that people might come back and use guilt tactics. They might minimize what we're feeling and make it about them. And it's, always about them. They might get angry over that, or they might want to test your consistency with that and try to respond with things like, well, you've changed, or you're just too sensitive, or, why is this always about me? And we need to stay calm. We need to repeat what our boundary is. We don't have to explain it. Um, I always say, like, when we say no, no is no. It's no period. We don't have to explain why we're saying no. It's okay to say no to things. And consistency with that boundary creates credibility to yourself, to that person. And so we just need to be, again, consistent and repeat what our boundaries are and not over explain and stay calm through it, even if they are using guilt tactics, even if they are minimizing our feelings, and they're showing anger. So those are things to just keep in mind when boundaries are challenged, that we stay calm, we repeat the boundary, we don't over explain, because consistency is going to build that credibility with that individual that you're setting a boundary with. So when we're building resiliency through practice, it's small steps, right? Um, just say no with one minor request. I've had to do that in my own life, like I said, with relationships with family. No, I can't do that today because today I need to make myself a priority and I need to take care of what I need to do for myself. Um, Resilience grows through repetition. So making sure that you're practicing this in a safe space, that you're reflecting and adjusting as necessary, but you're being repetitive with those boundaries and those things that you're setting up. And celebrate the progress when there is progress. Every healthy boundary strengthens through self trust and confidence and understanding what you need and trusting yourself to set those boundaries and to do that. And so we're going to have some time for questions and reflection, but also just understanding that where you are, I want you to think about these questions and write these questions down and maybe journal about them later, is to reflect on what we've learned today is, where do I need stronger boundaries? Where are the things that maybe I mentioned earlier that are signs? What are some of the signs that you may need stronger boundary? Are you feeling drained after interactions with certain things or individuals? Do you feel guilty when you say no? Um, do you have difficulty expressing your own personal needs around certain individuals? Or do you feel like you're constantly avoiding conflict at all costs, right? What is one boundary that you can practice today, this week, this month, in what you're doing? Setting boundaries shouldn't make you feel like it's a difficult thing. You should feel responsible for your own well-being and setting boundaries is a part of that, right? You're allowed to practice and protect your peace. I say that often when I'm dealing with difficult family members or people in my life is I have the right to protect my peace. I have a right to advocate for what my needs are, and I have a right to prioritize my own recovery over others. Um, what fear is holding you back from setting these boundaries? The fear of maybe losing that relationship or losing that individual. Well, if you do it, that's their choice. But at the same time, you have the right to protect your peace and prioritize your own mental health and your own recovery. And boundaries are really bridges to healthier connections. And we need healthier connections in our life, in our day, in our family relationships, in our friendship relationships, and in our personal marriages and all of the things, right? Boundaries are something that are going to help for healthier connections. And so they're needed in our lives and in the way that we present ourselves and the way that we communicate. I know that, like, again, these are important in our own recovery and my recovery, and making sure that we continue to recover and adjust to ways that keep us on a positive recovery plan. And boundaries are something that are super important in that. So, again, I want you to write these things down, to reflect on them today, tonight, this week, and into the future, and create boundaries for bridges that are healthier connections in your own personal life. So now I want to open it up to Jeanette again to see if there's any personal questions or situations that you'd like to bring up or ask, and or maybe just share like what came about as we're going through this, and things that maybe you're comfortable sharing that you recognize that are areas you need to build stronger boundaries, or things that maybe you need to practice on, or maybe a fear that's holding you back.
Thank you, Xavier. I don't see any questions as of yet. But if everybody could gather your questions and go ahead and put them in the chat, I'll go ahead and read them, and I'll give you a couple of moments to do that. Xavier, thank you for all of that wonderful information, and giving us all something to think about. You know, I think everybody can improve in that area with setting boundaries. We have our first question from Kirsten. You said over explanation is not necessary, but is it bad to do it? If so, how do you curb that impulse? I think this is my personal biggest weakness when it comes to boundaries.
That is a great question, Kristen. And I think a lot of us struggle with that and do that. I know I have to stop myself sometimes because I feel like I have to explain and over explain why I'm setting a boundary for this. Um, and we do have oftentimes an impulse to just continue to tell them why this is important, right? But the reality is, I wouldn't say that it's bad, but it's unnecessary, right? Because you have the right to set a boundary to protect your own mental health, and to protect your space, and to advocate for yourself on behalf of that. And I think that I always say I have the right to protect my peace. And if setting a boundary with an individual is necessary to do that, I can just say that. Like, I'm setting this boundary because I'm protecting my own mental health in this moment and protecting my peace. And I'm asking you to respect that. It can be literally as simple as that. But we feel like we have to say, look, you are triggering to me because like we have to keep talking about it and keep explaining why we're setting this boundary. Um, and we don't need to do that. It's not necessary. We can just set that boundary, advocate for our needs, and prioritize our own mental health and recovery over others.
Thank you for that answer. Are there any more questions out there? Don't be shy. Xavier, while I'm waiting, oh, here we go. This is from Richard Hernandez, not a question, but a comment. It helps to have one or two people that can be friends, family, or whomever who are supportive of you. This way, if and when you run into challenges with others with setting boundaries or others aren't accepting of them, you still have your supportive person in your corner who can remind you of the validity of your boundaries. Receiving validation is a very helpful feeling. Thank you for that, Richard.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with all of that, Richard. You are absolutely correct. And oftentimes that brings up another good point. When I'm setting boundaries, I have a couple people, trusted people in my corner, that I often talk through about it first to say, like, am I out of line here? Like, I feel like this is a boundary that I need to set up, and I feel very strongly about this, and I just want to kind of bounce it off of you and see what you feel and see what you think. And this is why I'm setting this boundary, and this is the reason this is how it makes me feel when I don't have this boundary set up. So oftentimes it's also beneficial to have a friend or family member that you can talk to about that before you set that boundary up, to make sure that you're reflecting on that with somebody else that can validate that, understand that, and make sure that, like, you're not, again, I'm one of those people, I do that too, because, like, my way of thinking isn't the only way of thinking, right? And sometimes having someone else to talk through with that give me a different perspective, or help me understand a different approach to take with it, or maybe even a different boundary that I might not be seeing that I need to set. So that's always good to have too.
Thank you, Richard, for that comment. Xavier, I was going to say, I think the hardest part for me is to remember that no is a complete sentence. Now, for me, after the no, I feel guilty for saying no. I feel like I let the person down. And then I feel like I need to explain everything to them.
Mhm.
So that's something that I need to work on, because that guilt kind of makes me say yes when I don't want to.
Yes, that's something that I struggle with as well, and I think many people do. But the reality is that if someone truly knows you and truly um, is coming from a place of good, when you say, no, I cannot do that, they're going to respect that and understand that, and they're not going to require a reason, right?
Mhm. That's
Um,
good.
So that's how I look at it, is I shouldn't have to explain myself. If I say no, there's a reason for it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not in the right mental health space. It's not something that I can take on because of my time constraints. It's not coming from a bad place to say no. Like, I think we're almost trained growing up that, like, no is like, no, this is not something I'm doing. This is bad. This is, negative. And it's not. It's just that it's not in my capacity right now to do that for many reasons, or one reason, or any reason. It doesn't matter. We have the right to say no. We can't do that and just say no. Like, we don't have to explain why. We don't have to tell people, like, I'm not doing well mentally right now. I can't do that. Or I'm overloaded right now and I can't take on one more thing. We shouldn't have to explain that. We should just be able to say, like, no, I'm sorry, or no, I can't do that right now. No,
Thank
period. Right?
you. No, period. Okay, now from Stephanie. How do you know when to start slowly letting the boundaries up, especially when the other person isn't understanding or thinks that your boundary is appropriate and she's right? And then it says, this is mother.
So if there's anything, yes. And she also said, I see in the comment, unfortunately related to politics and moral. Wow, can I can I relate to that? Politics is a really hard one nowadays, for a lot of people to, and setting a boundary. I've had to do it with my own family of this is not a topic that we're going to discuss. Like it's just off the table, right? Like it's a topic that's off the table because it creates so much animosity and anger and um, anxiety and all of these feelings. And that's not something I need more in my life right now, right? Like I need less of that. And so I can relate to that, Stephanie, in so many ways. I the question, how do you know when to slowly start letting the boundary up? It's how you're feeling, those signs that I talked about. Are you feeling drained after every interaction with that individual? Are you feeling, um, walking away and having difficulty expressing your own needs, like where you feel almost like this attack of like you can't even talk, there's no common opportunity. It's just a one-sided, and you can't express your needs. Um, and you're feeling like you have to avoid that conflict at all times, right? If you're feeling that way, that's kind of letting you know that you need to set up a boundary there. And a way of slowly setting up a boundary there, just say, it can simply say, like, when we talk, I did this. This is how I approached it. When we talk about politics, it really is uncomfortable for me because I know that we both have different views and feelings about this. So I feel in order to protect our relationship, I need to set a boundary up that we don't talk about politics, or we don't talk about this because religion is another one with relationships. It's been an issue for me because of my faith and I'm married to a pastor. And so I have respect for everybody where they're at and when they are at, and that it doesn't interfere with my relationship. But when it comes to certain people in my family, it's like, oh, you think you're better than us because of this. And it's like, okay, well, in order to have a relationship with you and have it be healthy, that conversation just needs to be off the table, right? It needs to be a boundary that I set up. And this is where it comes down to either or, right? Like either politics is off the table as a conversation for us, or we're not going to have a relationship going forward because we can't seem to be on the same page when it comes to this. And unfortunately, that's what I've had to do because if you can't respect this boundary, then there's not a place for you in my life right now because we can't find a common ground. And I want you in my life, but to have you in my life, this is a boundary. And if you don't want to respect that boundary, then the cause of that or the effect of that is that you're not in my life. And that's not what I want, but it's either you respect my boundary or you're not in my life. It's that simple, right? And it's hard because you want to be able to find a common ground, but it takes two. And you have the right to protect your peace and set your boundary. And if they're not willing to respect that, then that's really them making a choice to not have you in your life, not you pushing them out of your life. Does that make sense? Does that help, Stephanie? I hope.
And she also says there's no interaction. I've cut her off with the exception of seeing my children.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's how it goes back to when do I start lifting those boundaries?
Yeah.
Because you've cut off interaction. So
Yeah.
next we have Richard. As much as we have the right to be as firm or stringent as we like in our personal lives, do we have the same right for boundaries at work?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we obligated to give in more in a work environment? I feel like if I don't say yes or don't continue to take on more, or if I set a strong boundary at work, then I am or will be looked up on as someone who goes against the grain or isn't as valuable to the team or is a problem person on the team. for lack of better phrases. Just curious on your perspective in a work environment.
So, there's a couple things that came to mind as you're reading that. One is, we have accommodations in work environments to help with individuals who need accommodations when it comes to mental health, breaks and different things, right? So look into more of that and see if that's something that can help you in your situation because every work environment is different. However, yes, you have the right to set boundaries at work. So for instance, um, one where I work, sometimes people work on the weekend and I am in leadership at my full-time job. So my job that pays the bills, this is the job that doesn't pay the bills, right? This is my passion project, right? TCMF and my foundation, but I have a job that pays the bills. And so when it comes to that job, I'm in leadership, so I'm kind of expected to be on call all the time, or at least I feel like that. That's not the case, right? Like, but I've set boundaries of, when I go home after work, I don't look at my emails. They're on my phone, but I don't have to look at them. I can set a boundary of saying that like my family time is my family time and that's a priority for me and I don't need to respond to that. If before I go to bed, I have 10 minutes to spare and I want to check emails and respond to them, that's my choice. Um, but my boundary is I don't have to, right? My boundary is when I'm home on the weekend, again, I have access to all this, but I don't have to check it. It's a choice of mine. But the boundary is I don't have to, and they know that, and I know that, right? And it's not expected of me. And they understand that. I come from a place where, I've worked with people who they say, well, if you come in on time and leave on time, you're just a part-timer because you should be putting an extra effort or extra work. No, it's not. That's not true. That's a boundary for me. Like when I'm at work, I work and I focus on work and I'm a hard worker, but when I leave, I let it go and I focus on myself, my family, and what's important to me, right? Boundaries at work, yes, you should have. So again, for instance, my door might be open, but if I'm working on something and somebody interrupts me, I might say, I'm sorry, I don't have a minute right now, but can I get to you and I'll get to you in like 15 minutes when I wrap this up. There's nothing wrong with doing it. It's how you present it, it's how you set it up, and how you communicate it, right? But please don't go back to your job and say, well, I did this webinar on boundaries, and so I'm just not going to do any of this because this messes with my mental health, right? Like there's a way to do it and a healthy way to do it and a healthy way to talk to it. But, if you have somebody you work for who is constantly pushing stuff on you and you feel like there's a boundary that needs to be set there, I would say, have that conversation with them and let them know that like, I feel like you're asking me to do more than what I am capable of doing right now. So I'm trying to find a resolution to get there because I'm feeling, the pressure and talk about that and see what sort of boundaries you can set up based on that.
Thank you. And Stephanie says that helps and thank you. Now we have Richard again. Thank you for your thoughts and perspectives. Smiley face. I appreciate it.
Good, I'm glad. Again, it's just perspective and some ideas, but find what works for you and just know that yes, you have rights in every part of your life to set up boundaries. It's just the approach and how you do it that matters and how it can be perceived, right?
All right. I was thinking of a recent situation where um, I went to a work function where I had to do what I call a NAMI table, a resource table. And a young lady approached the table and she took a liking to me. Little did I know we're neighbors in the same complex. So now I get texts every day from her, every day since the day I've met her a couple of months ago, 2, 3 months ago. And when we talk, she goes over trauma, trauma, trauma. And I had to set a boundary and say, I can't handle that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I listen to this at work all day. This is my weekend. I need to relax. I need to refocus and I need to get in the right mind frame so I can handle Monday. If you need a therapist, I can recommend one,
Right.
but I can't fix your life and it stresses me out when you do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard for me to say that. I had to practice it in my head for a while before I said it. And
Mm-hmm.
she cut the conversation off. She got it.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Yep.
I, I can't fix her life.
Yep.
And
Yep.
now the old me would have said, let's work through this. But I'm not a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not anything close to a therapist. I'm a peer support.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just learning to get better at that.
Well, and even as a peer support person, like we can only do what we can do, but we also have to take care of ourselves to do it, right? And so again, there's boundaries with that. Like there are times that I am not in a mental state to respond to a crisis. And so I have to tap out and then call on somebody else, my support to step in, and vice versa, because we're people. We're not Superman or woman. I mean, some people think we are, but we're not. Like we have to restore ourselves and take care of ourselves and have boundaries to protect ourselves just in our work ethic, work environment too, right? You can't be on 24/7 and survive, like you can't. And that happens a lot in this type of work where you just have to know and again, remember, boundaries are a skill. It's not a personal character trait, it's a skill. And we are constantly working on finessing that skill and learning that skill throughout different circumstances that we come into. So,
Yes. I have a raised hand, but I don't think I have any ability. Joy, could you put a question in the chat? I don't think I have the ability to let you speak. Is that right, Xavier?
yeah, I don't know how you do
I
that.
don't have
Not in this
a
way. No.
button that I can unmute her.
Nope, I don't see that. So it'd have to be in the chat.
Okay. So Joy, if you could just put it in the chat. Are there any other questions from any of our other people in the audience today? I don't see any right now. Well, I'll ask Xavier a question. Have you ever set a firm boundary and then gotten flack for it?
All the time.
Oh,
All the time. With my family, I have a brother who has serious mental health and substance use issues. Um, and I am I want in every way to have him always be a part of my life, but when he's not actively in recovery and taking care of himself, it's very difficult. And it's just one example. And I've had to set boundaries. Like I will come in and see you for a period of time, but I don't want you at my house because of the anxiety that it causes me and the safety issues that come with some of the choices he makes and things. And I've heard it all. I've heard it all from, well, you don't really love me then, or you're being selfish, or you think you're better than I am, or like I've heard it all and get feedback of that, and it's like I know that's not true. I know where my heart is coming from, and it's coming from a place of I'm trying to protect my own mental health. I'm trying to protect my family and their mental health and their safety. And you can try to make me feel guilty about that. You can try to make me feel bad about that. You can get angry about that. But the reality is, I have the boundaries set in place for a reason, because when I didn't have boundaries, it affected me. It affected my mental health. It affected my marriage. It affected my relationships. It affected my safety. It affected my peace. It affected all of those things, and I won't let that happen anymore. I will not let that happen anymore. No matter how much I love the person and want to be there to help them and support them and have them in their life, it is not going to, if it's going to affect those things, I set a hard boundary and I stand by it.
I think we're responsible for how we respond to people, but we can't control their
Absolutely.
response to how we responded. We're not in charge of their emotions. We're not in charge of their response. And I've learned to not go back and forth with people. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to have a long debate. If I said no, I meant it.
Hmm. Yep.
When
And
I drop that boundary, I regret it every time. If someone asks me to do something 3 different times and I tell them no 3 different times, then they come back the fourth time and then I say, okay, I'll do it. I regret that.
mhm.
And that literally happened to me. And then we had to have a long talk afterwards. If
Yeah,
I tell you no the first time, accept that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah, the
can't.
only thing we can
We're
control is ourselves,
Yeah.
and how we respond to things. And that happen, I mean, I say that often, exactly, in a similar way that you just say it is, we can't control the things that happen to us. All we can control is how we respond to them. So we can control how we respond to someone, but we can't control how they respond to us when we set up
Yeah.
boundaries. It's the same thing. And so, um, it is what it is, and I've just I firmly believe, it's not selfish, it's self-care to set boundaries and to stand by them, because we're protecting ourselves and protecting, our mental health, and that's an important part of who we are. And if people don't understand that, that's on them, it's not on us.
Mhm. Okay, we have Joy has put something in the chat. Been dealing with people who take away my energy and have told people that I'm not a therapist. I deal with my own struggles and feel like I have to listen to their issues. Well, but I can't talk about my issues. It's tough, and I went through something traumatic. My issues I'm not able to talk about. It was an ending of a life. We all struggled, and you need a therapist to talk to, and it's not me. Joy.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I think that, you know, I'm glad that you recognize you're not a therapist and set that boundary up, because some people forget that.
Wow, thank you for that. I'm saying goodbye to Richard. He needs to leave.
Thank you, Richard.
Richard, your insights were very valuable. Thank you. Okay, are there any more? We've got about 12 minutes left. I'll see if another question pops up in the chat. Give it just a moment. Okay.
I
I,
always like the interacting part, so I always try to do my presentations quicker so we have more time to interact.
yeah, the questions and answers are so important. Oh,
They
wait a minute.
are.
Wait a minute. What about X's? Oh, here we go. There's the last 12 minutes.
Yes.
Take it away. What about X's?
I mean, all the things apply. All of it applies. I don't need to, everything that I talked about today, it applies to the exes the same as it applies to family members, the same as it applies to everybody, right? Boundaries are boundaries, and you have to have them for your own mental health and safety and protection and all of things. And again, it's not wrong, and it's not selfish, it's necessary. So, yeah, I don't know what more to say, that it all applies with exes the same way it applies to everyone else. So,
I was going to say, if you relax your boundaries with an X, it sends mixed signals and it can lead to confusion. And someone can say, well, the other day you were all for it. You know,
Right.
so I agree with you. You have to keep them the same.
They're
For
an X for a reason, right? And
right.
just remember that's for a reason.
X for a reason. That's right. Okay. It's getting it is getting costly in court to set up boundaries. Hmm,
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna assume that that probably means that there's some sort of court battle between the ex with setting up boundaries. And yeah, I mean, that can become a little bit more difficult, especially when it's in the courts or there's legal aspects or there's children, involved. It gets a little bit more complicated and you don't always have full control over that. Um, I can just say that, like, for me, the reason why I talk about this so often and I chose to talk about it at this topic is the earlier in relationships, life in general, that you can start setting up boundaries and keeping those boundaries, the better off you're going to be in the long term. But sometimes we get to that point, I'm going to relate this to like mental health in general. Like we've learned, right, that the earlier you can intervene and get somebody the support and help and things that they need, the better off they're going to be, and the less likely it will be for them to get to a crisis stage, right? When somebody is in crisis, it's a lot harder to help them because of multiple different reasons, right? Less support in crisis around. Their mind doesn't let them accept the help a lot of the times, because they're in crisis. There's just it's harder because they burnt a lot of bridges or hurt a lot of people in that process of getting in crisis. So there's like it's harder to help them. So the key is to get that earlier on so that they don't get to that point. But that's what it's making me think of in this situation is that, again, you know, set those boundaries now and early so that we don't get to a point that we're having to fight for these boundaries in court or fight for these boundaries in divorce or, child things and stuff like that. Because hopefully, if we're setting them up, we may not get to that point. But regardless, you still have the right to have boundaries in your life and protect yourself and your peace. And yes, Joy, no is a sentence. It's just no, period. It's not no, but no, because no, I'm sorry. It's just no. Um, and that's all it has to be.
Just know.
Hmm.
All right. Anybody else? We've got a few moments left. Um, but at this point, I would like to thank everyone for their participation. Um, and thank Xavier once again. You're just walking in wisdom. Everything you said was something that we can all use on a daily basis. Because if we don't set boundaries, we're going to be worn out and worn down and stressed and unhappy. So this was a very important topic. I don't see, here we go. Will we get the recording? Um, this is being recorded. Contact NAMI and they'll, since you're anonymous, you have to give your information and we can get it to you. Joy, thank you so very much. This was great. I appreciate you both. Thank you for a great presentation from Denise. It was very timely. And Warren says, yes, Warren will be the one that will help you with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Warren, and thank you everybody for the opportunity. And yeah, my contact information is always available too if there's anything I can help with. I know, we work very closely with NAMI and NAMI is a great organization. So if you ever need to reach out or anything, we're here for you too. So
All right. Well, with that, everyone, we're going to give you 6 minutes back in your day. And thank you. And we'll see you next time.
thank you.
Thank you.